Welcome into the special Fordham men's basketball Atlantic 10 play edition of On the Hill. Nick Guzman here alongside Lou Orlando and Chaz McAdams, your three broadcasters for Fordham men's basketball. Everybody wearing their Fordham gear. I'm wearing my Fordham Ram Volume 104 shirt, even though you can't quite see it in the picture. We're all repping because it's the start of conference play, guys. Fordham opened up their conference schedule against St. Louis on Tuesday, New Year's Eve. Didn't go quite so well. Fordham falls 88-63. Before we get into all the X's and O's and what went wrong for Fordham and their outlook in the Atlantic 10 this season, how you fellas doing?
I've been better. That was a pretty bad loss to SLU. Nick, we were both courtside for it. It
Yep.
was pretty rough. But this is
Oh my God.
this is yeah, I'm in rough shape. This is break, man. This is the time where you can just like chill out. It's nice to have Sunday scaries, but there's nothing to be scared of because it's
Yeah.
something to do. College football, made some money there. The Fordham win would have I had a good New Year's Eve night too. A Fordham win just kind of puts the Fordham loss put like a dark cloud over my whole being. And so yeah, I'm just kind of wallowing in self-pity and shame per usual.
Wow. Yeah, no, listen, man, that's special stuff. I'm not going to be able to top that. I am enjoying my break. It's nice. No classes. I get to lock in on Fordham basketball, so hopefully that will be fun. You'd like to think so. I was in attendance for that St. Louis game with the fam. First game I've actually gotten to watch next to my family. So that was cool. I enjoyed that. And I got to see you guys as well, which was very nice.
Yeah. You didn't enjoy actually the physical part of
I
watching the
probably
game.
not, really not,
No.
you know.
I'm in the same boat as you, Chaz. Like my whole family last night was getting ready to go back to work today. And I was like, not couldn't be me.
Nice to meet you, bro.
I slept till 12 today.
Yep.
And you can do that.
Oh, you're such an alpha.
You can do that with break. But let's move into the important topics of conversation. We'll start with the St. Louis game. Fordham's conference opener. SLU came into that game at 7-6, a really uneven non-conference slate for them. Some bad losses, teams like Wofford, Illinois State in there. But of course, the three-headed monster of Jimerson, of Swope, and of Avila. So we know the St. Louis team, how good they could be, but they've beat Fordham 88-63 in a game that wasn't close really at any point throughout it. For St. Louis, it was Gibson Jimerson getting the headlines with 33 points on 11 of 15 shooting. Did most of that damage in the first half, but then as he sort of quieted down in the second half, that's when Swope started to chip in. Avila finishing with 19 points, Swope with 15. We talked about before the game and throughout the broadcast, Chaz, the lack of depth that St. Louis was supposedly supposed to have. It doesn't really matter when you can't stop any one of Avila and of Swope and Jimerson. So Chaz, I want to start with you just in terms of your when as you're watching that game unfold, sitting next to me courtside, and you're seeing just how much Fordham's struggling defensively to contain those stars of St. Louis. What was running through your mind there?
A lot. There's a lot of things running through my mind. A lot of them not repeatable on Jesuit airwaves as we're having the blessed be to record on. I think it was a mix, which I don't usually talk about. You know what I mean? Players get criticized a lot. It just looked like St. Louis came in more ready. The prep by the coaching staff of the Fordham Rams just didn't really look up to what it needed to be, if to be bluntly honest. And I think that the first people to admit that will be the Fordham coaching staff, because St. Louis just came in there with such a good game plan. They ran so aggressive off pretty weak screens, you know what I mean? Implementing a new motion set for the Rams. They usually only go to they have a pretty singular, but I saw them implementing a few new things, a lot of screen action around the perimeter. Me and Nick, I feel like we're caught in the air talking about only perimeter action for the Rams a few times. But the screens just seem weak, or St. Louis knew the screens were coming and did a great job of fighting over them. And I think blitzing the ball screens was a choice you made, and a lot of times you have to live with it. But I just saw way too many times Swopes gets blitzed as the ball handler. The guy that goes to double leaves a via wide open at the free throw line, a via at the free throw line. Then the baseline help comes up, and then a backdoor cut was wide open for a layup. Nick, how many times do we see that exact play?
Well, one time I said Jimerson had done a couple of backdoor cuts, and then you said a couple. I was like, yeah, no, more like
Yeah, a
three or four or
couple.
five, maybe even
Yeah,
six.
yeah.
There was a lot. There's a lot of them.
It was a lot of backdoor cuts. Yeah, Ergo described it perfectly. He just came in and punched us right in the mouth. And I know it is like the age old saying, but it's not about how you take the punch, it's about how you get back up again. So I think this Bonnie's game on Saturday, I'm already nervous. I'm already thinking about Melvin Council Jr. I'm already thinking about him coming in to the gym after what he did. He took Fordham to overtime with Wagner last year. Like, they're really good. Bunnies is a really solid squad. And I know I've been yapping for a sec, but it's just like, I did not expect that. Like, there's been times when Fordham's lost by more than what they lost last on New Year's Eve, and I've been like, okay, like, yeah, I can wake up the next day, have my breakfast burrito, and like figure it out. But this St. Louis loss is sticking to me like glue. I feel like a rat in a trap right now, gnawing on peanut butter. I just don't know what I'm doing, and the fact that we got Bonnies, it's I'm kind of losing it, guys. I'm kind of hanging on by a thread.
I can tell.
I'm wearing a jersey from the Under Armour era over a hoodie.
Yeah, the kid's all out of sorts. He's
Eh,
gonna get a grip.
I'm a middle stage Rubik's cube right now. It's not even random to the point where it's beautiful. It's like there's 3 blue squares in a row, and then you got 8 on the others. I'm a mess. I'm a mess.
A lot going on. This is very clearly, I think, the wake up call for the Fordham Rams, and it's whether or not they actually get woken up by it. Because big thing that stuck out to me in the second half, and I'll say this as someone that's been watching way too much New York Rangers hockey, where the big complaint has been lack of effort and lack of willing to do what they need to do to get themselves out of a rut. I didn't see the effort and the intensity in the second half that you needed to see from a team that was down 13 going into the second half, but had a little stretch at the end there where they maybe caught fire and made it interesting. They came out so flat. It's been the talking point that they don't start second halves well, and that might have been one of their worst second halves by the time they actually started to put the ball in the basket a little bit. I mean, it's way too late. I think the defensive issues are really coming to a head. And I think Coach Ergo, at least to us in the media, and I imagine, I mean, we've seen him say it to the team as well. He's been trying to warn them that this is coming, that they're not playing defense well enough to compete in the A10 right now.
Oh, it was
How many
always like that.
how many
Before
times
and
has he said to
non-con.
us post game that the way we play defense today is not going to cut it against the A10 competition? I feel like he said that at least 3 or 4 different times. And
It was
we
all
finally saw that
5 non-conference games after Daytona. All
right.
5. He said that.
And it's listen, that 5 game winning streak was important for I think the team's confidence, especially on the offensive end. I think the big shock here is Fordham gets completely shut down offensively, and I've always heard this going back to the days covering Fordham women's basketball as a sophomore. When you get to the A10 slate, the way teams prep for you and the way you prep for teams is supposed to change drastically. Obviously, the familiarity is there, and in the A10, even with more transfers coming in, there's still carryover. You know teams year to year, you know coaches, you know their styles. But literally, the amount of prep that goes into game planning and strategizing for your opponent, that's supposed to increase exponentially. And we saw St. Louis prepare for exactly what Fordham wanted to do. Anytime Jackie Johnson wanted to drive the lane, there were 3 guys standing right there. And Jackie still gets 14 points
He's
because
got to be a better passer.
Right, but so they knew exactly what Jackie wanted to do. He wanted to do those hesitation drives. They clogged up the lane. They knew Fordham was going to do a lot of those screen handoffs on the perimeter. And I really never felt like Fordham challenged St. Louis to move in a meaningful way on the defensive end. And then offensively, they knew the gaps that Fordham had defensively and they exploited them. So that is, I think that's a little bit, that should be, we're talking about intensity and focus on the player side. Part of that, I don't know if that's maybe a shot at the coaches at all. I do think that when you get beat that bad like that, and St. Louis feels like they have all the answers against Fordham, that I don't know. I don't think that's a great look for the players or the coaching staff to start off A10 play.
No, definitely not. And I think to your point about, every time Jackie would try to penetrate and get towards the basket, there'd be two or three SLU players right around him. I think the times where they were able to kick it out to the perimeter, particularly early in that first half, Fordham were missing. They were
Yeah.
missing their
It's
open
true.
three,
Missing open shots.
They
missing
missed a lot.
open
That's
shots.
the they missed a ton of shots in that game. You can't. That's a team that put up 80 plus points 5 straight games, and they looked ice cold. And maybe part of it's like the layoff. You're off for 10 days. It's a weird two
Rest
o'clock
first
New Year's Eve
rust.
game. Who knows? Like, you think, even though this game is obviously not good, and I think it puts the Fordham community in a little bit of doubt, like they're 100% better than what they showed in that St. Louis game. But the big thing we keep hearing is the A10 is tough. The A10 is tough. Listen, I like, is St. Louis the worst team in the A10? Absolutely not. They were picked to finish fourth in the preseason. They have three of the top five scores. So they have that's a team that at their best should be a good A10 team. But they weren't playing like that, at least going into the game. So I like that's so many teams in the A10, right? They're gonna have size and talented scorers. That's basically the entire A10.
And
It's on. Sorry, Nick. Just
go for it.
it's honestly just like this stretch before school comes back. It's Bonnie's on Saturday, and then away VCU. Oh, and away Davidson. VCU sneaky beatable. They've looked pretty bad. They've looked okay. And Davidson's just like always scary. Um, this year at least. But there is Nick and Lou. Like we got the big three together right now, and we got to talk. Like I'm forever the optimist. Like there's been a lot of discourse like this season. There's a lot of high points. That 5 game win streak Fordham was on was massive, and there's a certain sense kind of now. I haven't felt this bad about a team, and I know it's one game, and I'm Mr. Long Season, but I haven't felt this bad about a team since like I was watching Fordham lose games before I came here. It's just I'm not saying that's objective fact. I'm saying how I feel.
Yeah.
And I think I'm being a voice of the fan base right now is like, even though I think this team is objectively better than the squad we not only saw under Neptune, but under Ergo last year, there's still this sense like taking a loss like that as your first conference game. Maybe it's the drop off. Like I forgot what it felt like to lose. Maybe that's what it is.
I mean, yeah, I would like last season, it felt there were a lot of low moments
I
where
mean, yeah,
the
NGIT.
student, not even in conference play, where the student body would be there, but obviously the crowds weren't as intense. But I remember a lot of home games where the crowd was there and Fordham just came out flat, and it wasn't like a break game. It was a like during the semester game. Like that's to me, I'm really curious to see what the crowd is going to look like for
I
January
have some
15th.
inside baseball for that. I have some inside baseball for that.
Go for it.
I was approached by not Fordham staffers, but Fordham Athletics staff about a meeting between myself and a few other students that have been kind of tried to be leaders in like the Fordham student section, whatever. Um, Fordham Athletics realized that last year or 2 years again, I hate talking about it. 2 years ago, Magic, you might not catch lightning in a bottle twice, but the fact that you have that potential shows that there are schools. Sorry to jump all over the place. There are schools that have seasons like Fordham did 2 years ago that don't get the crowds that Fordham got. 1,000%. There's teams in the A10 that do really well. Like Duquesne doesn't have like I mean this year is rough. Fordham is last in attendance. And they do, but there are schools that do well, the low major level that don't get crowds and do well. UVM basketball, that's a great example. That's kind of one I know at the top of the head. They win the American East a lot, don't get a lot of fans. It's just the nature of the beast. But so the athletics department is realizing the fact that this school has that potential, we need to capture that back. And it is I'm told, at least what I'm told, a like DEFCON 5 prior, like it is on in the first three things on in like the athletic department's list of like stuff to get done.
Ergo's been talking about it all semester long in the
Yeah,
fall.
but yeah.
And
The thing is, you gotta win. That's the only thing
course,
that'll
of
make
course.
I mean, hey, that's the Will Richardson quote from our
Yeah.
season preview was
Rip Goat.
we need to earn that crowd. I will say, and I'm not comparing this team to the team 2 years ago. That team 2 years ago that went 25-8 started 1-3 in conference, I think. And they dropped that opening game at home. They
That
started
did happen. I do remember that. I do remember that part.
listen, I have it right in front of me. They dropped the game on the 28th to Davids and they lost 57-43 at home. December 28th, that was the A10 opener. They went to URI, lost by 3. They beat St. Joe's at home, then they got crushed by Dayton 82-58 at home. So that's all break, no fans. Obviously that season turned around once school started back up. The St. Louis game, I think, is the turning point where people
Slew's the big one. Slew's the big Saturday game that was everyone was like, whoa.
So, listen, I think there's another level to another level or two to the fan experience and the fan base that we haven't even come close to seeing this year that I think is going to get there because look at the non-conference slate, the home games. There's no game that moves the needle. And like even if you do your
Dayton.
in the fall, the non-con games.
I thought you
Is
said
there any
conference.
game?
Sorry.
Is
You
there
cut
any
out a
game that
little
was
bit.
moved?
Oh, of
Maybe
course.
Drexel. Like people aren't getting up for Drexel. Listen, they're a great basketball team, but it just doesn't have the cachet. It's a non-conference opponent. There's no history there.
Totally
But
agree. Totally agree.
there are home A10 games. January 15th is the 100-year celebration. You know that they're going to try and not just get students, they're going to try and get alumni for that game. You have Dayton at home. There are big home games in conference play, which is when Rose Thrill blossomed 2 years ago. And again, last year, there were people in the stands. Rose Hill was packed last year. It was just dead. And just to be straight up and to kind of be blunt, the team was kind of dead. And the one game the team played with energy was the ESPN2 game against Duquesne.
Duquesne Friday night.
For one night, Rose Throw was back and it boosted the Rams to a win. I think this team is better than they were last year, like significantly. I really do believe that. I think when they get that fan base behind them, and I think it will come, it's going to take them to another level because one of the benefits of Rose Hill is it's small. Like that's a unique environment that I don't think you really see anywhere else in the A10. Like everyone else's arena is big. Even right, we just talked about LaSalle got a new arena. There's no one else that really has the tight, packed in, almost high school vibes that Fordham can
That
have.
makes it better. Like
Yes,
that, I like that. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. 100% agree.
So can I tell a story about last year about those dead crowds? So call it Wednesday night. I forget the team. Wednesday night, I get out of class early. Blessing, so I'm able to make the game. I go see a few friends, so I sit with them. Probably far right section of the student section, middle row. Crowd's dead, so I'm like, all right, one man army. It's like, let's go, blah, blah, try to like start again going, right? And it starts a little bit, but I gotta yell because it's just me that's starting it. You know what I mean? And I'm a one man army, so I go and I'm let's go. And this girl in front, I didn't notice her at first. This girl, about at my 2:00, a row down. Hey, can you? She turns around. I didn't see her. She turns around. She has a book in her hands, a book, and is like, can you please quiet down and not yell in my ear? I was in shock. I was in shock. So I
In the
go,
library?
Basketball game.
bro, bro, it's a basketball game. And I call her bro, which like I love doing that to like people that don't get called bro a lot because it usually throws them off. I'm like, bro, it's a bro, it's a basketball game. So then I move up a few rows because I'm like, I don't want to like get into a whole thing. But I still do the and then now the crowd's starting to kind of do it. And I'm like, maybe like I can like be the defibrillator a little bit. Rose thrill. And then I see her get up and move. And I think her friend was still there. So she comes back. She's like, I'm leaving. Blah, blah, blah. Says to her friend in front of me. And me and my friend that I'm with just start laughing. And she cusses and she turns at me, pivots, starts cussing me out for yelling during a basketball game. Like she was cussing me out.
I think step one is making everyone in the student section understand that it's not the library.
This isn't walls,
This
bro.
isn't Walsh.
Right.
This isn't the
It is part of the Fordham challenge. It's not like uh, I like Fordham. We're not Penn State. This is not bred like into we're not
Oh
kids
yeah,
don't
no.
come in with this understanding of like we have to be crazy. So it is something like they need people
Part
like
of that, part of
McAdams,
that
people like the shirtless herd to show them the way.
people that in that meeting I had, I was talking to one of the guys in athletics. He was like, it was tie game at Mowgli, a third down, and the crowd was silent.
Yeah.
Opposing team's ball. It's like you got to make some noise. It's third down. He was like, you got to teach these people how to cheer, and I'm like, oh yeah, cheer
Yeah,
school.
we got a lot of work to do.
Cheer school with Chaz McAdams. That would go hard.
I'd be there every day of the week.
Imagine that. Imagine that on the if we get that on the jumbotron. Like it's like how to cheer.
Honestly,
Yeah,
this is a
that's a
good.
good
It's
bit.
great that we're
I think
talking
if
about
it,
this on the hill. You should do like pre-recorded videos that they play during break. That would be an awesome bit if you're like
Like, look at my face.
funny. Yeah,
yeah,
and if it's like step one, if
Yeah,
you like
yeah,
a
yeah.
three-step how to cheer and they played it during breaks, I think that would absolutely play.
It'd be electric. But yeah, so
I'll
that
keep
was
you.
my experience. But I agree that there were NJ. So I'll be Wagner. The games I remember being packed last year. Wagner. I really only remember non-cons. I don't remember a lot of conference games having a lot of juice. Wagner, NJIT, Cornell. That Tuesday game I was at. And I agree that they like, because like you build it up, like, and then they lose, and then people forget they lose and they slowly start to come back, and then you lose to NJIT. So I don't know about how I'm interested to see what athletics has to say in this meeting. I'll keep you guys updated. But yeah, it should be like a lot of money's going for it. And I'm talking about like extracurricular activities, wink, wink.
Nice.
About like not direct help, but like being like
Yeah.
help organizing them.
Right.
Like funding, but they're like, we can help organizing. I don't think I just perjured myself. Who knows?
I mean, in terms of the team, what makes them, I think, exciting and potential high ceiling is that yes, the defense has really struggled, which is odd for a team that I mean, you hear it all the time. They're supposed to be defense first. That really hasn't been the case this year. Their offensive profile can be really strong. Again, the five straight games at 80 plus points, that's not even something that you really saw in the 25 win season. So they have enough offense to maybe I would say overcome some of their defensive issues, not the way they played on New Year's Eve.
no. And
And-
that's
right. So it's the defense doesn't have to become best in the A10. They actually have enough offensive firepower when they're on their game to overcome some of that stuff, but it needs to get back to at least middle of the pack where they're forcing turnovers and they're not just allowing wide open cuts to the basket.
I mean, Keith Urgo has said so often that like the identity of this Fordham team is supposed to be like defense.
It's an
And
ergo team.
Yeah.
it's a Keith Urgo coach team, but this year you wouldn't know that if you were just turning on the TV to watch them. But I think what made part of that St. Louis game so deflating and making it feel like the sky is falling is because number one, I feel like I got duped a little bit by St. Louis. yes, they had injuries. They had haven't really gotten any steam going in non-con, but I think I just kind of didn't value enough just how much of an advantage it is to have three guys right under 18 points per game.
I
Like,
mean,
okay, so maybe you don't have a great sixth or seventh guy off your bench. You don't necessarily need that if you're
Clearly,
if you've
clearly.
got yeah, if you've got three guys like that in your lineup. And St. Louis, not a great team defensively if you look at the numbers in the Atlantic 10 and just the way they shape up nationally too. So the fact that Fordham were that lost offensively, I'm definitely less worried about the offense than I am about the defense
yeah.
because I
Yeah.
think
They shot
100%.
60%. They
Yeah,
shot 60%.
60% to allow a St. Louis team to shoot 60%. I don't care how talented they are. 60% is absurd. That's a crazy stat.
Bro, you don't let like Houston shoot that well.
No. And then I think offensively for Fordham, yes, there were open shots that they had that weren't falling that maybe just chalk it up to it wasn't their day. But still, I mean, I think there were too many possessions on offense where it was just, handoff after handoff after handoff on the perimeter with no real penetration.
Yeah.
You're thinking about the way St. Louis would immediately push that ball inside, and immediately that opens up the entire floor for an outside shot or for something inside. For Fordham, it was just all on the perimeter too often. And it just made it frustrating to watch. And I think there's a reason why, Chaz, you're so upset and why all the fans are so upset after this loss. It's because it was, like Keith Thurgood said, just a punch in the throat. And the only way to kind of wash the taste out of your mouth is by doing something out of that Bonnie's game. And that's so much easier said than done, considering that's a Bonnie's team that's 11-1 right now. Is
They're
that correct?
13-1.
13-1.
Yeah.
And they just beat VCU,
Yeah.
predicted to be the best team in this conference in the preseason, at home to start off A10 play.
Game winner with a
Not
and
to mention,
and it's a home game for them on
I was
Saturday.
just going to say that. Not
All
to
right, yeah,
mention
yeah, yeah.
St. Bonaventure, their student body alumni base, heavy presence around New York City. They travel well. They're all psychos, so
And
they're going to be in the
this is
Rose
the first
Hills
time they've
gym.
been good in like 20 years. Like this
Oh,
is
you
gonna be
bet.
Rose Thrill. Rose Thrill is gonna be revived. It'll just be in gold and like mud brown or whatever their colors are. Not
Even when
maroon and
even when
gray.
they're not good, their fans are psychos.
Yeah.
So now that
Exactly.
they
So
have a
imagine.
good, yeah. So imagine what it's going to be like on Saturday. But I think we should look ahead to that Bonnie's game quickly for a moment because it's not a must-win game for Fordham. It'd be very nice if they could win it and not go to that tough road trip at 0-2. But for each of you guys, if Fordham is to come out of the Bonaventure game with a win, what is the biggest thing in your mind that needs to change from the St. Louis game? Obviously, there's so much that needs to change, but for you, what's objective number one that can't happen again?
I think I know. I think I know what Lou's gonna say. I want Lou to go first. I'm
Uh,
gonna type out what I think Lou's gonna say.
It's maybe this is not the first thing that needs to happen, but this is the thing I think I'm keying in on going into this game is I need to see Jameer Tripp win one-on-one battles a lot more.
Yes.
I think
Struggled.
he is, and Coach Ergo has talked about it. Like he is a special profile when you talk about a 6'7" guy that can play really 1 through 5 on the court, can guard 1 through 5 on the court. When you watch the way that St. Louis in that game not just exploited the defense, but they won the battles, the one-on-one battles, the driving lanes. Like Jameer Tripp is someone I looked at that St. Louis team and I went, there's no one that can guard him straight up. There's no one that should be able to. Like Jameer Tripp, I think, is the game changer for this team because you're going to get 10 plus a game from Jackie Johnson and you're going to get, your output from Josh Rivera, it seems like. I think the big X factor is what does Jameer Tripp do on a day-to-day basis? Because if he is the scoring monster that we saw in that really fun winning streak, I mean, that just adds, we've said it on the broadcast, it adds a whole new layer of depth to this offense. And it just adds an entirely new dynamic when you have that size in the starting lineup. Like, he's a guy I think that can take over a game. I don't think he uses or realizes that all the time. He's a little bit like Josh that first year sometimes, where Josh didn't always realize, like, I'm the strongest guy on the court. I can take anyone to the rim. Josh is realizing that now, and he's become a human highlight reel. I think Jameer still has a little bit of that to figure out, but when he does, it's special.
That's not what I thought you were gonna say. So I'm gonna say what I thought
Do
you
you
were.
agree?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Thanks.
Jameer's been struggling. I've had thoughts in my head about Josh starting over him. Because Josh's been playing solid, but Josh also makes some crazy decisions on the court.
It's also on the positive
Offensively,
side.
they're both lacking. So
It's nice to have Josh's energy off the bench. I will say that. I know we've toyed around with the idea of what if you sat Jaffe and had Josh start and you had this really big lineup in the A10. That actually is kind of intriguing to me because I thought Jaffe's energy in the second half and throughout the entire game was underrated and very good, especially on the defensive end. But I will
definitely
say
underrated
Josh's
defender.
energy as the sixth man off the bench has been very, very useful on that winning streak.
Yeah, totally. And he finishes games. He might not start, but he's in the ending lineup a lot of times. I need Abdu to wake up. I need Abdu to wake up. Zona can't do it by himself. Jaden's hurt right now. There, Abdu really mentally just doesn't look there for the Rams right now. And you know what I mean? Will he get there? Is a big if, because I've seen a lot of stories like Abdu where it's just like senior season, you're struggling, and just mentally it's like they're too far gone. You know what I mean? With Abdu, it's all mental. His physical skills are there. He knows his role. He knows what he needs to do. It's just when he gets in that 94 by 50, sometimes he just looks lost. And I need him not to look lost. And I also, if I'm to guess correctly, need better scouts from the staff. You know what I mean? SLU was a struggle. And I guess you can't prep for 33 from Gibson, but you can prep for Avila, Swope, and Jimerson because those are the only guys that did anything. If you go deny ball, you gotta know your screens. You gotta know that Swopes is a good passer. Blitzing those ball screens might not have been the move. Again, I don't know. I'm not a D1 coach, but there's just a sense in me that staff and players alike need to have an across the aisle accountability thing. Players need to tell the coaches. Coaches are always telling players, I need X from you. I think in a healthy environment, players can say the same to the coaches. I need this from you, man. Why didn't you tell me about Isaiah Swope's ability to pick up 94? Why didn't you tell me that SLU is known for their 2-3? They sit in it almost highest out of anyone in the A10. They didn't go into it once because they were killing Fordham and man. That cross the accountability has to go both ways. Coaches are always I'm gonna say it again for the TikTok soundbite. Coaches always asking players to be accountable. I need this from you. I need you to do this. Players, ask the same of your coaches. This is a Fordham team that has the skill to make good things happen in the A10. At their ceiling, this Fordham team can beat VCU. I'm confident in that. Loyola Chicago. I hope they have a chance to play SLU again at their ceiling. Bonnie's, they can compete with. I don't know if they can beat Dane even at their peak, but regardless, they're not there right now. They have to get there. Sorry, I just went on like a WWE promo, but I'm very passionate.
No, it's all true, especially, what you mentioned about the scouting and with SLU, there were three guys you had to plan for pretty much. Maybe Anya too, because
Anya's boring.
Anya's a dog. I gained a lot of respect for him in that game. He was all over the place.
He
But
was like Ramad that game.
yeah, he knew his role, and he knew his role was to facilitate for his stars, and he did that perfectly. In the Bonnie's game, you got five guys averaging 10 points a game or more. So in terms of what you had to plan for SLU was three stars, and even then those stars still got open and were the three leading scorers, and you didn't really stop them at all afternoon. Now in this Bonnie's game, it's not just Melvin Council. You got Moore, you got Brown, you got so many guys, and this is a team that's 13-1 and has beaten some really good teams this season. Fordham's hands are going to be full on Saturday. And it's going to be a crowd that isn't, although it's at the Rose Hill Gym, is not going to be as pro Fordham as you would like it to be with how well the Bonnies travel. And there's a world, guys, right? There's a world where Fordham picks up this win, right? I think so.
I think so. Sure.
I think if you want to be really optimistic about it, yes, the St. Louis game kind of has put into the atmosphere that the sky is falling a little bit. But, you think back to 2 years ago, you mentioned, Lou, how poor that start to conference play was compared to this year. But I think when you think about that 5 game winning streak, yes, it was against the America East, and the deficiencies were all pretty visible, especially on the defensive end of the floor. I think you just thought that maybe the team would just, as soon as conference play began, would kick into another gear and recognize that maybe the way they'd been playing wasn't good enough. So I think in that sense, a punch in the mouth isn't a good thing, but you can take it as a good thing that, okay, this is a wake up call. And if we continue to play with that level of effort and that level of commitment, we're going to get blown out by 20 points every night in the A10. And that's not acceptable for Fordham basketball. It's not acceptable for the fan base. That's not really acceptable for anybody. So I think the St. Louis game must serve as a wake up call. And, we've still got a whole conference schedule ahead of us. So
I know one game. It's one game.
But
it's
no,
one game.
guys,
It was a very, very bad game. It was a
And I-
Last
terrible.
time Fordham lost this bad, they beat Seton Hall the next day.
yes, but I will say this. Listen, your next three A10 games, including St. Bonaventure, they're all against 10 plus win opponents.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that you go into that 100-year game at UMass or versus UMass. It's at Rose Hill, first game back with
0-4?
students, and you're 0-4. So
Yeah.
I think the if Fordham really wants to, I would say, establish themselves and say, hey, like we are going to compete in what Coach Ergo is absolutely right to analyze as a very competitive, high level, mid major conference that has a lot of high level talent. If you can take a win from one of these 10
Just
plus
one.
win teams, the next three, just one. That's really all. Because again, VCU on the road is going to be really tough. Davidson on the road is going to be really tough. Bonaventure at home with their crowd is going to be really tough. So it's almost 3 road games to a certain extent.
VCU or Davidson on the road is going to be so interesting because you're not going to be back in the Bronx before then. That's
Yeah.
going to be crazy for me and Nick too, going on
Yeah.
that trip.
Prolonged road
Very,
trip.
I think maybe not a statement, but it would be a sign of progression if Fordham takes one of these next 3 games. And I think that's something that you could build on because it's not going to be easy.
Well, it's going to be Fordham against St. Bonaventure on Saturday. You can watch that game on ESPN Plus or listen to Lou and Chaz on WFUV 90.7 FM. That'll be me and Chaz
And the
have you
YouTube.
covered on the YouTube stream too. And then me and Chaz will have you guys covered for that road trip January 8th at VCU and then January 11th at Davidson. Finally, the Atlantic 10 schedule is here. Didn't start the way Fordham would have wanted, but there's still a long way to go. But for Nick Guzman, Lou Orlando, Chaz McAdams, we're saying so long for this week's episode of On the Hill. We'll see you guys next time.